Okay. So thanks again for being here today. I am Teresa Agresta. I know many of you, and some of you are new to our conversation. So Cynthia Forstman is my business partner, and as many of you know, she is also my sister. We've been in business together for over 20 years, and we're excited that you've decided to join us to hear more about this journey. So to get started, I know that you came here to have your questions about culture answered, but I'd like to start with a question for you. What is the world's most recognizable puzzle? And I'll give you a hint. While you may be a little bit puzzled about your culture, that's not it. As a matter of fact, Rubik's Cube is the best-selling toy in history. Today, they come in all shapes and sizes, lots of colors, and it's been used in movies, advertisements, and even clothing design. Solving one has come to symbolize everything from intellectual prowess to the ultimate in control and confidence. I bet that you can picture several floating around in your own home somewhere. Maybe there's one on a toy shelf or hanging out on the desk in the kitchen. I know that we have them and I can just kind of picture them. It's likely that you also have some kind of relationship with this frustratingly fascinating little puzzle. And did you know that even though it's been scientifically proven, I think it took a Google computer a week to figure this out, but that every possible position on the cube can be solved in 20 moves or less. But it still took the inventor, Rubik himself, a full month to solve his own puzzle for the first time. So lucky for you, today we are going to share how to solve Rubik's Cube in just 10 seconds. So let's take a look. Well, okay, that's one way to do it. If a solution has always eluded you too, you can take solace in the fact that less than 6% of the world's population can actually solve the cube. So, true confessions, tell us in the chat, have you solved a Rubik's Cube and how long did it take you? So give us your experience. Under 3 minutes, says Tom. How did I know that? True confessions for me, I actually solved one several times, but it really probably only counts as once because after I got it, I wouldn't let anyone else touch the damn thing. So I could keep that cube within 3 turns of solved. And I found that was really the best way to ensure a repeat performance. So yeah, some people. So we've got some smart people in the room here. You guys might want to connect with each other. So at the face of it, a Rubik's Cube looks like this harmless little toy, but it can leave even the most accomplished people feeling defeated. Sometimes we might also feel the same way about organizational culture. It seems simple on the face of it, but when you try to address challenges, complexity grows. And some days you might just want to trash the whole thing and give up. Yet remember that research has proven Every position on a Rubik's Cube, no matter where you start, can actually be solved in 20 moves or less. All you need is a code. So let's consider this approach.
Ready? Let's begin. So before you move anything, here are some concepts to keep in mind that will make solving the cube easier the more you practice. Number one, when solving the cube, try to bear in mind that you're solving for pieces, not stickers. What do I mean by that? Most pieces on the cube actually have more than one sticker on them. So if you try to solve a cube by only solving for stickers, you'll quickly find that while you might be able to solve for one face, the other faces won't match. And that's because not all pieces on the cube are alike. There are three types. Edge pieces, like this one, have two stickers. They look like this. Corner pieces, like this one, have three stickers, and they look like this. And center pieces, at the middle of each 3x3 face, have one sticker. These center pieces are attached to an axle inside the puzzle, so they never actually move. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, because the fact that these centers don't move mean that they actually dictate where all of the other pieces need to go. Finally, many people think of the cube as being comprised of 6 faces, but another way to think about it is that it's comprised of 3 layers: a top, a middle, and a bottom. Today, we're going to focus on solving the cube one layer at a time.
It's so interesting how what seems hard and complicated can be made easier, especially when you connect with someone who has a system and a way to simplify the complexity of challenges. And that's essentially how Teresa and I got into the culture business, because before we were Culture Talk, we co-founded and ran a business called Allegory Studios, where our primary service was branding, and our sweet spot client were organizations who had already achieved a high level of success, and they were actually ready to rebrand. If you've ever been involved in a rebrand, they are large and complex initiatives. But the way that we handled them, we kind of had what you might consider a center cube in our approach. We began by all of our projects by actually measuring the culture in an organization and then letting the brand emerge from the culture. It was impactful. It was powerful. Clients said, hey, you know what? This was fun. It was meaningful. And what it allowed us to do was kind of unlock the code of a company's DNA, its heart and its soul, and to translate it into a story that leaders could build momentum around. And that's why we founded Culture Talk. We got to see firsthand the way story moves people, the way it ignites teams. And we realized that this process was actually turning culture into a tangible business tool. So today we understand that culture is a lever, and just like any other business lever, it can be measured, it can be managed, and it can be led. And it can be applied to help solve many connected business challenges. Let's look at a couple of examples. If culture were a cube, right, maybe these would be some of the sides or some of the puzzles we were trying to solve. Culture can show up, in mergers and acquisitions. That's obviously a growth strategy where 1 + 1 should equal 3, but the majority of M&As lose impact. They say up to 80% because there's many challenges in integrating cultures. Or culture change. It's hard. First, we can't see the hidden assumptions or attachments that get in the way of change. Plus, to change the culture, you have to change the beliefs and behaviors of lots of individuals who are part of it. Brand and purpose. That's the work we were doing at Allegory, defining the DNA of an organization and turning it into something tangible. Or how about recruiting and retention? A culture that is tangible can actually be applied to attract talent and engage teams. And I think we're pretty familiar that there's a high cost to getting those strategies wrong. Leadership, inclusion, team development. An organization at the end of the day is a collective of individuals, and individual employees are looking for cultures where they feel included, cultures where they can grow as leaders. And finally, maybe your culture cube has a side called reputation and crisis management. And that's because your culture, it's either an asset or it's a liability. And when we make culture tangible, we can manage our reputation and use it to avoid or navigate crisis. So there's momentum around the world for businesses to step up and tackle the big challenges in the world. We've got B Corps, we've got movements like conscious capitalism and the well-being economy. You know, businesses are being mandated to operate with a new model where profitability is not the only goal. And new models of business have, they need new ways of becoming activated. So what we want to share today is the process that you can use to make culture work. One that can help you map critical decisions with intention, consistency, transparency. We're actually going to share the system that we teach at Culture Talk, and later we'll give you an opportunity to learn more about the system and consider becoming certified to deliver it with your own clients or within your company. But first, let's just take a real quick look at the 5 steps. This is just a cheat sheet so you know where we're headed. Culture becomes tangible when we can frame it, measure it, scale it, sustain it, and share it. Teresa is going to take us through step 1.
Okay, so step number 1. As you've probably experienced yourself, talking about culture can be a little bit like talking about the water that's in this fishbowl. It's ubiquitous, it's intangible. It's hard to find words to define what the fish is swimming in. Many organizations and leaders are trying to do this, but they don't have a system or a language to lead a meaningful conversation about culture, one that builds understanding. And maybe this is even worse. Here's some language being applied. Sometimes we think we're talking about culture. We even think we're talking about the same thing and having understanding exchange between people. We may even use the same words, but have very different meanings. And then, of course, there is always more than one side to a story. So take The Tale of Two Beasts by Fiona Robertson. Looking at the cover of this book, which one do you think is the beast? From the girl's perspective, she's acting with kindness and providing life-saving care to this poor little beast. But the little guy here, he describes the experience from a very different point of view. So to facilitate this meaningful conversation we need to have, one that builds team consensus around important issues, you really need to establish a common language, one that the whole team can learn. This framework should apply to both individuals and to organizational cultures. That's a really important point, and we're going to keep coming back to that. It should also help us to identify and understand relevant points of view from different perspectives. Because when teams adopt this common framework, it can become a foundation that you can build from and a tool you can use to evaluate alignment between your existing programs and your new ideas. Here's the framework that we use at Culture Talk, and we didn't make this up. If you've joined us before, then you've seen this universal human code called archetypes. It comes from the psychotherapist Carl Jung, and he introduced these timeless stories and very relatable characters. He said that archetypes show up as personality in individuals, and they show up as culture in groups. And they can help us to understand our motivations and behaviors. Just by scanning the list, I bet you can already sort of make a guess or see which ones jump out as something that might be something you could identify in your own story personally, or maybe your organization's story. We find this framework is incredibly effective in organizations because archetypes are like a code. They provide a shortcut so that we can quickly understand and get people onto the same page. They're like having an aha moment when you introduce these ideas in groups. And you can understand sort of what type of culture exists in an organization. And then it allows people to talk about it because they have a common language and there's new meaning that's been established. So let's look at an example. This is how the sage archetype shows up in an individual. We all recognize sages in our lives and in our workplaces. These are the people that focus on facts. They dive into research with a grin. They're happy to do it. And they point out all the important details, even when we don't want them to. And that's because the sage behaviors also have what we call a shadow side. A sage can get stuck in analysis paralysis. Oftentimes, they kind of take things too far and they have a hard time relating to others when it's not based in their own area of expertise. We can also identify these patterns in organizations. Let's take a look at the caregiver as an example. When this organizational culture pattern is expressed through the strengths of its archetype, we have the makings of a world-class customer experience organization, perhaps. Teammates bring empathy and self-sacrifice when they show up on the job. And the environment that this creates is stable and consistent. We have a real sense that we can trust this organization. But as you might have guessed, organizations also show up with shadow sides. And the tendencies of the caregiver when it's in shadow is to give and give and give and make other people almost dependent on them. Maybe they should back off a little bit because there are certain things that people should do for themselves. They kind of don't know when to stop, which really exhausts the organization and the people in it, and it makes them kind of look like a martyr. So you see how having this framework can help, because if you don't have a framework and a way to talk about things, one that's built on human motivation, such as the archetypes, then you're kind of stuck believing that culture is a list of perks or that it's nebulous and that it can't be measured. But when you do have a framework, you can measure against it. So a framework is the first step. Let's move on to number 2. Measurement presents its own set of challenges. One reason that it's hard to talk about culture is because it's often reflected in what we call the unwritten rules of engagement. So even when we attempt to write things down, we put them into an employee handbook or we write out mission, vision, and value statements, there's still a gap between what gets said and how things really work around here. Because culture shows up in shared values. Consider how your organization handles things like career growth or professional development. The preferred leadership styles, those are the things that end up getting rewarded. What about work-life balance and how home and family life come into play? That's certainly something that has really taken a front seat over the past year. And what about humor on the job? Is it welcome, not welcome? Diversity, inclusion, social justice. Where do those things come into play? And health and wellness, does it have a place at work? It's also very idiosyncratic. It's kind of woven through the very things that are difficult to enforce, like interpersonal relationships, the way we treat each other, and what we consider acceptable. There's nothing we can do about the chance conversations or shared complaints, maybe, that take place between teammates when they're on a tight deadline or when they get together over lunch. So you might be asking yourself, can culture actually be measured? We are all aware of the number of best places to work or like awards that have come out. Unfortunately, those types of competitions and the measurements that they use, they get hung up in employee satisfaction and maybe a list of perks or benefits. And while we don't want to minimize the importance of those things, it's clear that years worth of these awards and countless satisfaction surveys haven't moved the needle. So step number 2 is to measure. Because without a measurement system, you don't have a way of understanding those underlying cultural drivers. And that leaves you to diagnose issues by evaluating symptoms on the surface. And as we just discussed, that can be a trap. You have a big celebration because you won the award, and you return to work, and you can really only have a limited impact. So you need a way to measure underlying human motivations and drivers so that you can identify the behaviors that you want to encourage and those that you need to minimize or get rid of. So you need to ask yourself, are we measuring the right things? Since the pandemic began, we've been hearing a whole lot more about kindness at work as well. So you need a system to measure that won't result in finger pointing and blame, or bring up for leaders this real underlying fear of label or the judgment, because they're oftentimes afraid to even initiate a culture effort if they feel like they're going to get a bad score, or they're going to hear back that their culture has been labeled as a bad culture. So you want a system of measurement that opens the door to healthy conversations and eliminates a fear of judgment. We've already seen a little bit that culture and personality exist on a continuum, where the biggest strengths sometimes lead to the biggest challenges. So it's a big plus, and it's a real benefit that these archetypes are human stories. They're rich and colorful, but also flawed, and we can relate to that. We can use them to position the things we're really good at, also to identify the shadow traits and where we have opportunity for growth. Another example might be the goal-achieving hero. We all recognize them when we see them. That's the person who lives to conquer challenges, but they can become an aggressive bully when it's taken too far, and then run over everybody else in this quest to always get to the next win. And we've seen in our work time and time again that archetypes encourage honesty and vulnerability, but they allow us to remain sort of psychologically safe, which is critical. I'm going to leave you with one additional thought about this measurement system, and that is that every profile is unique. We each have the capacity for all 12 of these patterns, but we have clear favorites, and we lean into them very heavily on most days. Once we measure them, we can also take it a step further and identify the nuances and the ways in which they show up for each of us, and how it's like a thumbprint that makes each of us very different.
So now we've measured it. And can't you just hear what this guy is thinking? He's saying, what? So what? Now what are we going to do about it? And we've all been there, with organizations that introduce a check the box, program or a flavor of the month initiative. And that brings us to step number 3. The moment you survey a team to ask their opinion on a cultural issue, you need to be prepared to do something with it, to put it into action and to actually create change about whatever it is that they've evaluated. If you don't, you can actually, create some negative morale and disengagement. So if you're going to identify challenges and opportunities, you need a robust program that can address the challenges that you've identified. So measuring culture can be a powerful starting point, but it should take us somewhere. We want to go from point A, where culture can become that through line. What I want to do a little bit in this section is talk about how we can use a baseline culture audit or an individual personality assessment with archetypes to transform both people and the shared experience. And I'll tell you, with archetypes as a framework, there are many possibilities about where you can go. So here's a couple quick examples. About 10 years ago, we were working with a family-owned business, a transportation company in the Midwest of the US, and they were looking to significantly grow their fleet of trucks. Recruiting truck drivers is an especially challenging goal because there's high turnover in the trucking industry. So we began this project with a baseline culture audit, which included measuring and validating 3 archetypes that were part of the cultural profile, in this case for Nussbaum transportation. And leaders agreed that the innocent hero and explorer were part of their profile. We then built a brand, an employment brand, and recruiting programs that were designed to reflect that profile. Here's just one example of how that played out creatively with truck signage that was designed to recruit drivers. And you can feel almost that innocence in the slogan celebrating faith and family. But over time, this very authentic kind of messaging that was emerging from the culture actually allowed the company to double the size of their fleet because they were recruiting people who were already more in alignment with their story and said, yes, that's the kind of culture where I want to belong. So the drivers felt more aligned and engaged. And that's had a really big impact on retention and in reducing turnover. Here where we're showing you that, in the industry, turnover is near over 100%, but for this particular company, under 30%. And the CEO expressed it this way, saying that, identifying the cultural storyline has really been a foundation to their success. A second example, how might you scale an individual archetype assessment? We go through a similar process where each individual takes an assessment and gets their results across all 12 archetype patterns. And then the first step for them after that is to actually validate a unique profile. And we've worked with many clients, and teams using this kind of an analysis, where a next step might be that the individuals on the team build their own professional development plan. And the professional development plan might talk about how they're going to amplify the strengths of their pattern, manage the shadows, or maybe even develop archetypes that they don't score as high on. We worked with a department at Turner Entertainment using this exact methodology. And the archetypes turned out to be so sticky for this client. They said after, in year 1, they said this was by far the most impactful professional growth work we've done as a team. So much so that they expanded the effort in year 2. And the head of the department, founded that looking at her team through archetypes provided a very different and profound perspective for her. And a final example of scaling outcome, DSC was a fast-growing women-owned business in Colorado. We actually first went in and ran a baseline culture assessment to help them build a brand, and we used the hero and sage archetypes for their cultural profile. And then DSC was actually growing, and part of their growth strategy was acquiring, similar firms across the West. And the head of DSC said the hardest part of acquiring another company is actually integrating the team members. So they built, an annual team event around this very tangible idea of a hero sage culture. And that's how they began to bring people into the organization and make them feel like part of the team. So when it comes to scaling, there's a lot of bang for the buck when you use archetypes. You can measure the organizational culture and validate it one time, and then there's many different ways that you can apply the outcomes. Same thing with an individual archetype assessment. And it's really kind of watching the work take hold in an organization. That's one of the most exciting aspects of using archetypes. And it's something that our partner community talks about as well. So you've scaled it, and now we want to get to step 4. How do you sustain it? We've said checking the box isn't enough. And today, employees and leaders are looking to initiate meaningful and lasting change. So there are other culture, systems that you can apply, but they tend to measure old ideas and old ways of doing business. Archetypes uniquely measure what matters now, right? Archetypes, some of the most important ways that our cultures need to evolve sustainably include new ideas about inclusion, new generations in the workforce, integrating remote teams. And these kinds of initiatives, rely on new ways of thinking and working together. There's no can training or Zoom meeting that's going to move the needle. We need to move beyond lip service on these conversations if we want to create lasting change. And archetypes are a tool that help us go deeper, faster. And as Teresa mentioned, they inherently create psychological safety. We tend to see that we're all human first and that we're a unique mix of strengths and shadows. So we need bold new ways of changing workplaces and making that change sustainable. Rather than a mechanistic or reductionistic approach, archetypes actually offer a very holistic and human way of looking at both individuals and the organizational system as a whole. They provide a shortcut for us to understand each other, but they do it in a way that offers nuance and depth. Instead of boxing us in, stories actually allow us and our entire teams to reach a new potential as we evolve and grow. It becomes, because it's looking at who am I as an individual and who are we as a team, it becomes easier and easier to align people with the overall organizational strategy. Nothing else really ties together personality and behavior of individuals with the overall culture of the organization. And the results of the work itself are sustainable and grow over time. And we hear that a lot as well. So that brings us to the final step in how do you make culture tangible? And the truth is, when you've got a great story, you want to share it. In our always on world, we have limited attention spans. We need, we have to take in so much information. So we need a language, we need tools that we can adopt that lead our cultures and teams. They need to have that sticky factor that Turner Entertainment loved. They should be stories that are easy to understand, they're memorable, they're fun to share. And they should invite curiosity and open conversation. And here the archetypes just deliver in spades, because stories are meant to be shared, and neuroscience is proving out that our brains are actually wired for story. Stories allow us to be seen, and fully seen. Something exciting that's happening right now is we have partners bringing archetypes into diversity and inclusion conversations. And that is proving to be a totally new way to connect people, where we experience that we're human altogether first, and we each have lenses that can become subjective. I like to think about archetypes as kind of ancient wisdom for the modern workplace. Rather than reducing people to a letter or a color to understand them, story lets people unfold into their wholeness. And when people learn their unique patterns, they literally show up and want to tell their stories. They get in their stories that it's a place of motivation and purpose, an anchor that they can return to, and one that gives meaning to their work and their lives. Stickiness also requires that individuals need to connect with each other. And this is just an example of, some of the ways we can coach with archetypes, where we can pair up different people on a team and help them understand kind of the unwritten aspects of their motivation that are, causing disturbance or conflicts, or how do they work better together. And speaking of sharing, that's really, Teresa and I love to share this system. It's too good not to share. We're here to get this work out into the world. We are tired of seeing human capital kind of reduced to making people predictable, logical, and efficient, and feel like we're measuring the wrong things. We want to offer that there's a model that help organizations tap into the full potential of their team and their unique organizational culture. Archetypes are universal, as we've said, they're globally recognized, and we do have people all around the world that are using these timeless but modern ways of developing people, cultures, and teams.
So that's how we tie it all together and use culture talk to close the gap between individual potential, team performance, and organizational strategy. It's kind of a three-part approach. We begin by measuring and defining the me, the we, and the us. And then we use these stories, as Cynthia shared, as a framework to develop people, teams, and our shared cultures. So let me share with you a little bit about how Culture Talk can help you to do all that. At its foundation, Culture Talk offers two validated assessments. There's Culture Talk for organizations to measure organizational culture, and Culture Talk for individuals to measure individual personality. To scale your engagements and your impact, we offer modularized workshops and ready to implement training programs. These can be customized to meet specific challenges and, of course, to fit in with the way that you go to market or the way that you solve challenges within your own business. Supporting materials run the gamut. We have everything from professionally designed workshops and facilitation guides, complete with handouts, sales materials, games, buttons, and things that really help to bring the ideas to life and help you with that share piece so that people can continue building on the conversation that you begin. We really appreciate you joining us today to learn a little bit more about these steps and about the approach and the system. And if you are ready to take action for your clients or for your own company, I'm excited to introduce our signature certification program, as well as some exciting updates. You might be asking right now, hey, is Culture Talk right for me? I'm not sure. Well, I would say that if you're tired of picking up the culture cube, playing around with it for a little while and trying something new, and then setting it aside in frustration again, then we should talk. If you and your team have the skill and the experience and the desire to lead these deeper, important conversations, but you've been looking for an easy to apply set of materials, validated tools, and a language and framework that will help you do it, then this program is for you. If you're driven to create more sustainable change and expand your services beyond what you've typically done, and if you've been identifying some of these new needs in the workplace that we've been talking about here today, then this program is right. And if you're ready to take action to solve some of these complex challenges, we're here to make it easier for you by sharing access to the Culture Talk tools. Now, this program is not for you if your business is looking for more of a one and done transactional approach, if you're looking to check the box on culture quickly, if you're just not really designed and it's not your way of going to market to build long-lasting relationships, that's okay. This program is really for those people who are looking for that deeper dive. So what you get as you come into the certification program is a suite of ready-to-go tools and materials. And you also, it's laid out through 8 weekly classes. We deliver them on Zoom, and they're 2 hours each. There is an in-depth library of advanced materials, both to help you learn as well as to help you sell engagements and work with your clients. When you become certified, you get a 3-month membership into our international partner community and access to baseline culture assessments for both individuals and organizations. I can't emphasize enough how much you will learn and grow through the experience of just coming through the program itself. Each cohort really gets to know one another. They develop strong relationships and oftentimes business collaborations. We're working cross different professions and different areas of expertise like HR, branding, in-house trainers, and executive coaches and experts in customer experience, all coming together around this really important conversation. Diversity inclusion, as Cynthia mentioned, is coming up through this work as well. A lot of cross-pollination with different folks working in different areas of expertise. We've actually certified an international partner community with practitioners across, I think, 14 countries at this point. And they are bringing the work in based on their own needs and what they've identified with their clients. We have a full listing of this group, and you can learn more about them and what they offer on our website in the Certified Partner Directory. And if you're looking for someone to bring this work into your organization, we encourage you to connect with one of them. This is what they have to say about it. They continually share their aha moments and what happens when they're delivering an engagement. It's one of the most exciting phone calls that we take on our end of the business, because there's always lots of light bulbs going off about the impact that they're having, both within their own business and the growth they can achieve for themselves, as well as the impact that they're having on their clients and on the goals that their clients, have brought them in to solve. We've also got some exciting news to share today. You may, if you've been following us, have seen that we just recently launched our brand new Introduction to Archetypes course. This is a 7-video mini course offered online, and it walks you through all 12 archetypes as you build your understanding of the framework and how it applies to individuals. You'll validate your own results, and then you'll build your own profile. And through this experience, you'll also understand how you can apply the thinking to leaders, teams, and organizations. When you register for certification, you get this course. It's a $1,000 value. It retails for only $197, but it's included when you register for certification. Then you'll have several weeks to dig into the material and to develop your very first course assignment, so that on day 1 of certification, you'll hit the ground running and as you get to know the other people in your cohort. And you'll be really ready to introduce your archetypal profile and to introduce yourself through the lens of the archetypes. After you complete the certification, we really want to make it easy for you to get going with the work. So as part of your certification, you'll be welcomed into our community with a 3-month package. It includes membership, as well as monthly calls for support and advanced training, introductions to other people in the community, and ongoing opportunities to collaborate. You'll get a package of surveys to get you started and preferred pricing on additional surveys, as well as coaching so that you can really begin integrating it and ensure that you're successful as you get started. Since we have people from all over the world coming, we've always played around with time zones to try and understand what makes the best match. And where we've landed is to offer 2 opportunities to join us. So you'll see that our next class starts on July 13th, and that's a Tuesday. We're offering it twice. So it'll start at 10 a.m., one cohort. And if that time zone works well for where you are in the world, then we encourage you to join us for the 10 a.m. class. We're also repeating that at 5 p.m. These are all Eastern time or New York time. And so for some, the 5 p.m. time frame is better. And so we'll repeat it and offer that same class at 5 p.m. So there'll be 2 different times within the course that starts on Tuesday, July 13th. So are you ready? If you join us as part of the certification program, you'll get a suite of ready-to-go tools. You'll get like a lot of material to help you lead your clients through times of crisis like we're currently trying to move past. You'll be able to help guide organizations into the future of work, and you'll really be able to turn culture into a strategic business tool that will help to move you forward to meet the demands of 2021 and the future. We're so confident that this is a solid program that delivers results that we're offering a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So maybe you've been following us for a while and you're ready to get on board. If so, that's awesome. We can't wait to welcome you. You can go to getcertified.culturetalk.com and find everything you need to register there. The all-inclusive fee for certification, plus all the extras that we talked about today, is $19.97. So you can go directly to that website, getcertified.culturetalk.com. We offer 2 convenient payment options, so pick the one that works best for you. If you're intrigued, but you still have questions, we understand. We are happy to take your questions now. So you can put them in the chat or wait just a minute and we'll open the screen up and share questions and get you some answers. We can also set up one-on-one calls to either with Cynthia or myself to help you understand if Culture Talk is a good match for you and for your business. So we're happy to work with you to allow you to experience a survey for yourself and to get your questions answered, even to connect you with some folks in the community so that they can share from their own perspective. So we'll close the share down now and give you a chance to just ask any questions that you might have. Just getting a chance to take a look at the chat now, but feel free just to, if you have questions, just to go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know what you're thinking.
Hi, Teresa and Cynthia. Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Hi.
Good to see you again, Cynthia.
Yes, good to see you.
Yes. Help me understand in terms of after certification, since it includes the 3-month membership in the group, what the continued membership is after that.
So the continued membership after the 3-month welcome period, you have several different options. Okay. There is an annual renew period to remain in the community and have access to the wholesale pricing on surveys. And that's $449 for 12-month period. Okay. And then there are some tiered subscription packages that put surveys into your account that they accrue on an ongoing basis. So they range from $99 a month to get 1 individual survey every month, up to $249 to get 3 individual surveys a month. So, and that also includes it wraps in the all of the other benefits as well. So there is no annual renew fee when you do the monthly subscription package.
Understood. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alfred wants a cure for his addiction to archetypes.
They're very sticky, as we said.
Yeah. I don't know if there is one, Alfred, when you get bit by that bug. I also just popped into the chat a calendar link for myself and for Teresa. And just a note that in the coming July class, Teresa will be teaching the 10 a.m. class. So if you are considering joining us and you want to talk and go to the 10 a.m. class, it might be a good idea to schedule a call with Teresa. And I will be teaching that 5 p.m. class, if that's the one that works for you.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, then we will thank you for taking an hour of your day today to spend with us. And as Cynthia shared, we are looking forward to connecting with you one-on-one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to our partners who came out to share their excitement about the work as well. We appreciate you.
Thanks very much.
Great to be here. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. You can hit stop to on the
Oh,
recording.
right. Okay. Stop.